Hello, I am Amanda Coulong, and you are watching This Week in Cloud Computing, episode 9 already. Cloud computing where it's a little bit cloudy with chance of computing, perhaps?
Oh.
I'm the queen of cheese, what can I say?
All right, I wrote that joke.
Yeah, it was actually Mark's fault. Mark, my co-host over here, and
doing?
also in studio we have Max, who is a systems architect here at Mahalo and going to provide some commentary for us today.
He's the CEO of Cloud.
The CEO of Cloud.
Yes.
There we go. There we go. So, event updates really quickly to touch on these again. Under the Radar's Commercializing the Cloud Conference is this Friday in the Microsoft campus in Mountain View. They still have half-day passes available for $345. So we'll put the registration link in the chat room, and we'll post those after the show as well. The Always On Demand Conference is also happening April 19th through the 21st at HP's headquarters in Palo Alto. So they actually just announced the top 100 private companies. So let's make sure we get that up in the chat room as well.
Now, did they choose those, or?
I'm not sure what the process is for that. Usually Always On with their conferences, there's a whole voting process that goes on, and I think there's a bit of pay-for-play involved with that too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And then, obviously, the Cloud Computing Expo, big show. That's the 19th through the 21st as well at the Javits Convention Center in New York City. So I believe they are still doing free passes. So if you use Twitter VIP, if you say register for Pound Cloud Expo New York, then you should be able to still get a VIP pass, a special VIP pass.
Cool.
So really quick updates in terms of events. Also, we have guests. That's important today, right?
Always good to have guests.
So on the phone, I have Parand Derogar, the founder and CEO of Expenser, which will be featuring our app of the week later on in the show. So welcome, Parand.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And so if you want to follow them on Twitter, it's at Expenser, Xpenser. And then also we have us joining us via Skype, Vineet Jain, the CEO of Ignite. How are you?
Good. Hello there.
How you doing?
Can you hear us okay?
I can barely hear him in here, so we might have to
we may have to have someone come in and turn him up a little bit in here.
But in the meantime, actually, we should also talk about the iPad.
The iPad, of course. We have to talk about the iPad every show.
Well, we're giving one away. That's why we're talking about this this week. And I'm actually showing this is the Alice in Wonderland.
I thought he was giving it to me.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. This is the Alice in Wonderland storybook. It's got all kinds of cool little things in it. So basically, you want one of these. We're giving it away.
I want it.
You can't have this one. This one's mine.
You won't let me have it.
But
he won't even let me touch it.
So no, you can't.
You're supposed to
You can't
touch
even
them.
look at it. It's like I'm like Nigel Tufnell in his guitars. So you've seen enough of that one. You can't. I'm sorry.
Don't even look at it.
Next one. Don't even look at it. Anyway, so you can have not this iPad, but your own iPad. If you tweet "thank you" to our sponsors, which are Verticore, so at Verticore, at Storm on Demand, and at NetDNA CDN. And also, don't forget to put the pound TWICC in there.
Otherwise, we can't find you.
I can't find you otherwise.
Yeah.
So, or at least separate you out from the other links thanking Verticore and all of our other sponsors.
So if they're thanking our sponsors, they have a chance to win. When will they find out if they've won?
Well, we're going to do it this week, but we're not quite prepared to do it because I want to make sure it's totally random and fair and everything. So we're actually going to announce the winner at the beginning, or actually do the drawing on air at the beginning of next week's show. So apologize for the delay, but I just want to make sure it's all fair and everyone's taken care of.
Of
Also,
course.
there's some runner-up prizes. 5 copies of Tony Zappos' Delivering Happiness book.
It's a good book, by the way.
Yeah.
I got my copy at South by Southwest.
Yeah, I don't think they're available in storage yet. I think you can't actually buy this, so you'll be getting
You
it.
have to know Tony.
That's right. So,
Or
us.
Amy Martin.
Yeah, or us.
Or us.
So thank you. Please tweet out thanks to all of our sponsors, and thank you to our sponsors.
Well, with all of that said, I think we have some news that we need to get to.
Do.
So, Google has just had its very first cloud computing conference targeting the enterprise. Surprise, surprise with that, right? And CEO Eric Schmidt admitted that Google's goal for its new Docs and the broader Google Apps cloud collaboration suite is to get 80% of the market. 80%. So, also regarding Google's strategy, Charles King, who is the principal analyst at Pund IT, told InternetNews.com it's sort of a Martha Stewart approach to IT. She has her branded products, but she's really about selling a lifestyle. Google's selling the cloud as a lifestyle, and while they have their applications, they're also ready to have partners supply a lot of the other pieces. So, question for everyone. Steve Ballmer already said Microsoft's all in with the cloud, right? We've talked about that on previous shows. And now Google is matching their bet. Who is best suited to win? Mark.
So the thought I have on this is I've actually tried to use some of Google's cloud products. For example, their word processor and spreadsheets. You know, I write novels, so I actually at one time attempted to put my whole novel into Google's word processor and tried to use it. Just tried to forget about the fact I was using remote storage and remote processing and everything. It was pretty much unusable, and it was probably because of the volume of information I had to deal with. But it basically chokes. You can use it for letters and things like that, but for large works, and the same thing with their spreadsheet. Actually, the spreadsheet chokes as well. So for any sort of, and typically the documents that corporations will be using, the spreadsheets in particular, will be huge. And I imagine a lot of the legal documents are probably very large as well. So in that instance, I actually think Microsoft has got a leg up, to be completely fair. I think doing some sort of hybrid solution, where there's something resident on your local machine that's storing things to the cloud maybe, or at least some of the processing is local, I think is probably the best answer. But it remains to be seen. I mean, Google's clever, but if you ask me to think about it and throw a bet down right now, I'd actually say advantage Microsoft on this one.
All right. Vineet, what do you think?
It's interesting. I mean, we hear a lot of noise from our customer base about Google Docs, but quite frankly, I pretty much echo the comment that was just made by our colleague to say, for real serious work, Google Docs is still not at par with what you can do with Office, Word or Excel or PowerPoint or whatever tool you use. So I would concur with that comment. I think they still have room to grow and catch up. So until then, it's Microsoft.
Well, then it's Microsoft. All right, and what about you, Parand?
Well, let me disagree then in that case. So I think one of the killer features of the cloud is actually collaboration that people discard. For example, we use Google Docs extensively for both our documents and spreadsheets, and the ability for remote people to work on the same document, sometimes at the same time, is huge. And we find, again, it's true that if you want to put a novel into Google Docs today, that's going to be quite painful. But a lot of times the documents are not that big. They're quite small. The other thing to keep in mind is that this 80% goal is over a period of time. And in that period of time, our broadband, our computers, and the abilities of the web browsers are going to improve significantly. So I think the fact that Google has cloud in their DNA, it is really core to what they do, is going to give them a leg up. And this is with apologies to my brother who works at Microsoft and other folks I know.
Disclaimer for family.
No, you make great. I mean, you really make great points. I mean, it's still a jump ball, I think, really, when you get right down to it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any reason why Microsoft could not you could do collaborative documents with the processing local, right? So if that turns out, if basically that turns out to be a deciding factor, then Microsoft's already got a lot of that code written. Google could do it, but it's just not natural to them.
I think the key will be broadband access in the future. I think what you're seeing could be network issues, anything like that.
Right.
So, Google's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's that then. Story number 2. Yesterday at an Amazon Web Services event in San Francisco, an information architect said, if you don't embrace cloud computing, somebody else in your company will. So the result will be IT outside of IT. So are we seeing this? Are you guys seeing this? With the rise in cloud computing, how much does IT matter? And how can it stay involved in the process? Max. Since you're laughing.
Interesting that you're asking him this, because I'm curious whether people are routing around him.
No.
Exactly.
We tried this early on in Mahalo when I first got here with Amazon EC2, and we still needed IT. We still needed an IT staff. I'm still here actually. So
yeah, it doesn't.
You're not a figment of my imagination. Thank God I'm not crazy.
Yeah, we're probably atypical, though, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Because a lot of places aren't naturally necessarily technology companies. They're companies that do something else, but they have an IT department. That you have to go and bow before the priest in the server room, and maybe he'll give you access to whatever program you're looking for or load it on the system. So I think what this article is saying is that now, like with Salesforce.com, right?
Exactly.
Before you had to go and talk to the IT guys, say, oh, please load Goldmine and or whatever program. Now it's just like, I'll just swipe my credit card and I don't even have to talk to that dude anymore. I got Salesforce running for my sales staff.
Yeah.
So let's throw it out to some of our guests.
Okay, Parand, what do you think? How much does IT matter?
So the thing people don't realize is that for enterprise, already some things are outside the internal system. For example, a lot of people host SAP, Siebel, etc., if you will, in the cloud, in the sense that it's managed by someone else off-site. So it is happening sort of for those enterprise apps already, and it's pretty well accepted. And I kind of think, yeah, many things are going to sneak in. For example, people complain constantly. You know, they've got a 250 meg local email storage while they could get sort of unlimited storage with any provider outside. So it's fairly natural that some subset of things will go outside. Is IT internally going to disappear? Absolutely not. There's still going to be a need for that, but many things will start to creep outside.
Have you guys read Nick Carr, Does IT Matter? That's another thing that we'll make sure we put in the chat room because this kind of relates to all of that.
Right.
Vineet, what are your thoughts on this? How much does IT matter with the rise of cloud computing?
See, from my perspective, our focus has been on the SMEs. And when I say SMEs, it's a company that could be a prosumer of one-seat account to somebody with 1,000 employees. So IT becomes more prominent or becomes a factor when you're dealing with a company of more than 25 employees or higher. And in even those cases, I still don't think that IT is going to be marginalized or sidelined. Definitely, you can do a lot more with less number of people in IT with cloud-based solutions, but IT is not going away, specifically in the situations where they have been fundamental to the operations.
Yeah.
Do you see people routing around IT, though, in your universe?
Oh, absolutely. There's one public customer we have. It's a very large colo provider in this country who have a huge IT. They have 1,000 employees just here in Silicon Valley. And they have SharePoint, they have their own file servers, they have eRoom, you name it. And despite that, they kept on signing up with Ignite 3 different departments. So this was a classic case of kind of working around IT. So we do see that happening quite a bit, and of course we would welcome that because, you know, that gives us a...
We have a little bit of feedback in here.
Yeah, I think we need to get the monitor in here turned down a little bit. Sorry, folks, we're having a little bit of trouble.
Amit has a very loud voice.
So, yeah, actually, we need someone in here to turn this. Yeah, so we can't hear anything, or you don't want us talking very loudly. Put it that way.
The joys of live television, folks.
It's awesome.
Okay, story number 3.
Story number 3.
Rumors are flying around that Oracle is going to acquire Citrix. Heck, they already bought Sun, right? So, how would a Citrix acquisition help Oracle's cloud strategy? More importantly, what role are acquisitions currently playing in cloud computing? Vineet, why don't we go back to you?
My personal opinion about Oracle buying companies is I'm dead against it because it's like there's no innovation. They're just growing the revenue by buying companies and therefore building the top line growth. And I guess for a company of that size, that has become a way to grow. So personally, from a small company point of view, we end up finally using products which are now being owned by Oracle. A classic example would be Berkeley DB, a very small, kind of technology, not small in terms of what it can do, but a small part of our total puzzle. But in order to now buy support contracts, we have to deal with Oracle. And that's what we personally do not like to do. So personally, I'm against it, but that's a reality. So we're learning to deal with it and work around whatever Oracle buys, we use a substitute.
You sounded like you were going to say something, Max.
No, Oracle buying Berkeley DB and now Postgres and MySQL, they've kind of got all these little pieces of the puzzle, just buying up all these companies that used to compete with them in the open source world now. I don't know where that's going, but.
Yeah, well, it seems like speed's important. I mean, with any new market, it's basically the. I read the same article that was talking about this, and one of the points the author made was that the speed in any new market, the incumbent, if they're slow, the new, if it's truly a paradigm shift, which this is, I think everyone agrees with that. Then the new companies that come along, the speed with which they can destroy the old universe directly correlates to the largeness of their success, right? Yeah. So, and also, how fast they can beat down anyone else who's going to compete with them. So, become the next Microsoft or the next Google or the next whatever. So,
yeah, cherry picking the right companies to purchase too.
Yeah, and don't forget, this is how Google and Microsoft themselves grew. Yeah. This is how it's done. Yeah. So, I do think that this is, as a theory for how to do this is correct. Google. We were just talking. I was just watching This Week in Venture, last show. And
by the way, make sure you're all subscribing to that too.
This Week in Venture Capital with Jason Calacanis and Mark Suster. And basically, they were making the point that Google basically grew by acquiring two LA-based companies. I actually forgot about this, but
right.
GoTo.com, which
You're
invented
right.
the pay-per-search
Yeah.
term advertising, which they initially said no to, and then it became the basis of Google's, something like 90% of Google's revenue comes from this.
Right.
And then I guess Applied Analytics or something like that was the name of the company they bought for AdSense.
Yeah.
It was another LA company,
Oh.
though. Yes. You know you probably run into the founder. I've run into him a few times around town as well. So.
Oh, let's get Parand in here too. Parand, what do you think? I'm more importantly, I'm kind of thinking overall, what role do all of these different acquisitions currently play in cloud computing?
Absolutely.
Just a quick comment on actually, Google didn't acquire GoTo. Yahoo acquired the next version of GoTo, which was
Okay.
Overture. the name.
Sorry, you're correct.
But they
Yeah.
did
You are
use the
correct.
same. They licensed the patent and eventually and so forth. I think for Oracle in particular, acquisition here is important because essentially I don't know if they have a cloud strategy right now. They make their money by selling enterprise software,
That's a
and
really good
I think
point.
it's important for them to stake a foothold in this market. So I think it is a very good area for them to approach, not just in terms of products, but also in terms of just having some real experience there. So I think for Oracle in particular, it's probably a good direction to go.
Okay, fair enough. Well, moving right along. Story number 4. James Staton, who's a principal analyst in Forrester Research's infrastructure and operations practice, say that 10 times fast, recently told Data Center Dialogue that a hybrid cloud environment is a reality for some firms today, but not in the way that many people think. A hybrid between your internal data center and a public cloud isn't very realistic due to latency, cost, and security. A hybrid between your internal cloud and a public cloud isn't realistic either for the above reasons. What is realistic is a hybrid cloud being between dedicated hosting and cloud hosting within the same hosting provider. So this question I would like to point to Vineet. Do you agree with Staton's barriers of latency, cost, and security?
No, actually, completely disagree because we started off with a pure cloud-based service, but we recognized right early on that because of latency, offline access needs, and also there's a psychological barrier where people are loath to lose control of their data. They need a local copy or subsets or entire data set depending on the volume or class of data, that the hybrid cloud would be the way to go. And we actually built what we call as a local cloud product and adjunct to the cloud file server. And I'm happy to report in the last 6 months that has become a very big dominant platform. 50% of our revenue is coming from customers who are adopting the hybrid cloud. And our hybrid cloud definition is essentially the cloud file server resident in our data center. So essentially it's a public entity. And then a local cloud that you're running in your data center, and we are connecting the two. So it goes completely counter to what James Staton has postulated.
Well, I
that would
think
be a
that
big
answers
no.
that. That's a really big fat no, specifically from a company that's doing hybrids. So I think we'll move along from that one.
I guess so.
Story number 5. Salesforce and VMware are debuting a cloud product later this month called VMforce.com. How original. Anyway, but they're remaining very, very tight-lipped about it until April 27th. So I don't really have a lot to say about the product itself. So what we're going to speculate here is, we're talking about a leader in SaaS collaborating with a leader in virtualization. Could we possibly be seeing virtualization as a service? What do you think these two are up to, Mark?
Yeah, I don't know because you added this right before we came in the show, so I didn't have time to prepare this
Sneak
one.
attack.
So apologies. So I'm probably not the best person to ask about this one. So I'm going to say Max. What do you think?
Hot potato, hot potato.
I mean, we already
Go ahead.
we already sort of have it with EC2. I mean,
Well, there
software
could be
as a
more than
service.
one competitor.
Oh, absolutely. But
There can be only one.
Yeah, it's not Highlander.
it's you make things a lot easier when you kind of combine, like you say, software as a service and virtualization. You get kind of point and click computing.
So you think it makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so this VMforce product could potentially do well.
Yeah.
Okay. Parand, what do you think?
Frankly, I don't know what virtualization as a service would be. I could imagine something like Google App Engine, where sort of you push your code up and they run it, which would be interesting. But I'm not sure. I guess I don't have an opinion until I learn more.
Right. April 27th. We just got to stick around and wait. Vineet, what about you? Do you think this makes sense?
Frankly, I don't understand what it means.
Yeah.
All right, so we're all sort of throwing.
Yeah, I think that's the big question mark out of all of the news.
So, right.
All right. Well,
there had to be one.
I believe that's a perfect segue for a sponsor break.
I think you're correct.
I believe that we've got some.
Now we're going to try something a little
performance
bit
or
experimental
something?
today.
A
We hope it goes
guitar?
over okay. Yes, indeed. So you know our sponsor Verticore.
Yes.
Been watching the show and they really wanted something a little bit more creative. So we have a little song for them. We started it last week a little bit. So here we go.
Hey, wait, I need to get my lighter.
Do you know the words to the song? It goes
I am not
Verticore, oh Verticore, you should be using Verticore. Core. Your cloud hosting provider letting you down. Take a look at managed private cloud solutions from Verticore. A managed cloud solution can easily replace your current IT infrastructure and eliminate IT pains. Avoid the cost and hassle of buying and maintaining IT equipment and software. Deliver 100% uptime to end users. Configure and deploy computing resources in just minutes with Verticore. Ready? You gonna sing with me?
Oh no, I'm not.
Oh yes, you are. Verticore, oh Verticore, you should be using Verticore. With Verticore, oh Verticore, you should be using Verticore. Verticore.com. Verticore.com. Thank you, Verticore.
He actually made
We did it.
me sing. We love Verticore.
Anything
At
for our
Verticore.
sponsors.
We love Verticore.
Anything for our sponsors.
Anything for our sponsors.
But they actually are, I mean, basically just put up we use Verticore. This is what thisweekend.com is based on, the site. And they have a panel. You just requisition your virtualized servers. I mean, it's almost what you were just describing.
Exactly.
And it's pretty much
But it
is up
makes
and
sense.
running in like no time at all. So, yeah, it's great.
Well, thank you for the musical interlude,
Always
Mark.
happy to do anything for our sponsor. Well, not anything, but almost anything.
Moving on, let's get into the discussion with Vineet. So we have Vineet, who is the CEO at Ignite. Now, impressive background, I have to say, Vineet. First of all, if you want to follow Vineet on Twitter, it's Vineet K. Jain, Jain. So let's make sure we get that up in the chat room for everybody. Vineet, you were born and raised in India. Before Ignite, you founded Valdero, a supply chain software provider, and you also served as the company's VP of Engineering. And then before this, you were at Market Fusion, a web-based solution for building and managing global sourcing infrastructure. And then you also worked as a consultant for Bearing Point and KPMG. So I think you know what you're talking about.
I hope so.
So I want to jump right into Ignite. So you offer a hybrid file server for small businesses that can store data and back up personal computers, and it offers all the bells and whistles of an enterprise class file storage system, but at a fraction of the cost. So what I want to ask is, how much does file server hardware and the related IT management typically cost a small business every year? Is there a general number that you have?
In general terms, the number can vary depending on number of people you have in your organization, and therefore, if you were to do it yourself, how much would it cost versus if you were to go with Ignite? But let's take a sample example. So a 10-person company going in with a cheap Dell, let's say T300 kind of hardware, with a few EULA licenses from Microsoft, tape-based backup, disaster recovery, VPN, and whatnot. With some part-time IT, you're looking at a cost between $8,000 to $10,000 a year on a recurring basis. Mm-hmm. And keeping in mind that you depreciate this hardware or capital expenditure over 3 years straight line. Compare that with Ignite, where for the same thing, you're paying us $50 a month, approximately $600 a year, for a terabyte of storage and a lot more capabilities than just what you could do with this physical in-house infrastructure. And we're seeing this whole CapEx to OpEx conversion story become the dominant reason for our business growing quite well.
Excellent. So a terabyte of storage. Now, small to medium-sized businesses typically aren't as IT savvy. So can you give us some sort of tangible way of understanding what a terabyte of storage could give somebody, or what they could actually store with that much?
Sure. The best example would have been to talk in terms of what iPod used to tell you. Mm-hmm. So many songs and so many, or iTunes, so many pictures. But we frankly don't really focus on the consumer side. So if you look at a regular Microsoft Office document, let's say a 100K document, you're looking at 1,000 gigabytes. So it is, let me do the math here. It's it will be 10,000 such documents that you could store in Ignite for that 1 terabyte.
Wow.
I think I'm getting my math right, I hope. Yeah.
Not bad. For $600 a year?
For
Not bad at all. I was reading David Linthicum's blog today on InfoWorld, and he made a really interesting point. He said that specifically as that smaller companies get bigger, cloud-provided agility will help them outpace their traditional competitors. So he's saying when smaller companies grow, the cloud could serve as much as 75% of their IT requirements as they approach $1 billion in revenue. So it's interesting to just look at, the SMB target and see specifically where it's going to get impressive with these guys. So from your standpoint, why did you target SMBs? Why was that? What was the reasoning behind that for Ignite?
And it's key to define what is the SMB definition for us, because quite frankly, when we started selling the product in 2008, to be very honest, we would sell it to whoever would come in and buy. And this was typically the real low end of the market, companies which were 1 to 10 employees. But there was no technical constraint in the product. And we essentially expanded that list to 1 to 500, and now it's 1 to 1,000. Interestingly, in the last quarter, actually, we just closed the first quarter, and we had some excellent signups with Fortune 100 type customers as well, which of course is not your typical SMB by any means. But the reason we went after the SMB market is, having learned a lot when I did Valdero, there we were selling an enterprise class solution with customers like Juniper, Motorola. Sales cycle was 6 to 9 months or even longer. And the way of selling is direct selling as compared to today, where 95% of our demand generation happens through internet, search engine marketing, search engine optimization, affiliate marketing. But the sales cycle is 15 days to maybe around 25 days. And therefore, there's a great opportunity here because the market size is huge, the SMB market, that is. Right. The challenge always has been, how do you get to this highly fragmented but extremely large market in a very cost-efficient way? And that's what I think we're trying to do really well. So far, we've done quite okay.
Well, dig a little bit deeper into that then. How specifically are you doing this differently than everyone else who's targeting SMBs?
See, it also comes down to, rather than just the demand generation part, is how do you get absorbed in this current market in terms of somebody looking for the solution and what I call as solving the day zero problem. Can someone come in, sign up, provision the service, and start seeing value in less than half an hour? Because in today's day and age, if you cannot address that need within the short attention span of 5 to 10 minutes, you've lost that particular customer or that potential customer. And the SMB, some people think more towards a consumer class of customers, and some people think more of an enterprise class customer. It's a pretty unique animal where they need the ease of use and the simplicity of a consumer class app, yet they want that to be coupled with the strength, the robustness, the security aspect of an enterprise class solution. So combining that in a unique solution at a cost competitive manner is becoming key. And I think, again, we've been cracking that nut quite successfully.
Would you say that the sorts of questions that you're getting from SMBs are beginning to shift as it relates to just their understanding of cloud computing?
Definitely. In fact, as we are gravitating more towards the M and the SMB, the amount of scrutiny that is done on a solution like Ignite is more and more on the security side. And security comes in different flavors, not just how safe is my data, but, for example, what kind of statutory compliances have you had, like SAS 70 compliance, HIPAA compliance, and this and that compliance. So the level of scrutiny for a cloud-based solution has just expanded with the larger class of customers as cloud is getting more popular.
Okay, that makes sense. There's some really impressive names that are backing Ignite. Namely, you've got Maples Investments, and they provided early funding for both Dig and Twitter. And then you have Polaris Venture Partners, who collectively funded 2 companies that IPO'd in 2009. And so, Vineet, what I would like to know is, you're a successful entrepreneur. You've reached over $11 million in sales that when you then you sold Valdero. Are you aiming for the same with Ignite? What's the ultimate plan for Ignite?
Very simply stated, and with all humility, right now our heads down focus is, we have a revenue target for this year. We got to make that happen. And we have a similar target for next year. We have to make that happen. Clearly, I'm not interested in building a company to be a lifestyle play, because I've done a bigger company before.
Right.
At the same time, for me to come and tell you I'm waiting for an acquisition to happen is kind of foolish, because I can't predict that. The only thing I can control is build the company and grow the revenue fast enough that opens up a lot of possibilities. And of course, the IPO is far out, so can't even think of it.
Yeah, I don't think many people are thinking IPO right now.
Well, I would say your momentum's pretty darn impressive because last year, Ignite experienced 900% customer growth, and you are currently acquiring customers at a rate of 15 to 17% month over month.
Wow.
That is pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty huge.
And actually, 2010 is turning out to be really good so far. In the month of February, we doubled our MRR compared to the previous month, monthly recurring revenue. And in March, we increased our customer count by 40% month over month. So that number is actually surpassing that 15 to 17% that we shared with you.
Nice.
So at least for 2010, things are definitely on a upswing. And, as the VCs like to call it, the classical hockey stick.
Exactly. Well, what is the secret to your success, Vineet? One thing we like to do is just give some practical advice on the show. So what pointers do you have for other startup founders?
Again, I don't think I would say we are successful yet. I mean, there's a lot of things to be done. But one thing I can say with confidence, having done other startup before, is we've become quite frugal with how we are spending the VC money. In fact, I didn't raise VC money for the first 2 years of the company. I and another guy funded it because we had some wind in our sails, given that we had a decent exit out of Valdero. So trying to do it a little differently as compared to when I did the previous company. As an example, in today's day and age, you can pretty much outsource all the core but the non-critical stuff out to other providers and thereby reduce your own capital expenditure. So I think that's one key thing here, that now in this economy, you can do a lot of things very, very cheaply. I mean, a classical example is leasing an office space. The rates in Silicon Valley, which is where we are, in fact, we're right next door to Google and Intuit in Mountain View. We can get a great office location. In fact, we're moving on Friday to a new location at a rate which is, I would say, 1/3 of what we would have paid, let's say, 7 years from now, or 7 years before, 6 years before.
Yeah. So basically, to paraphrase, be humble and gracious. And even when you're incredibly successful, act like nothing's happening and you have to double down and work 5 times as hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, my question is, if you're able, obviously your product helps with virtual offices, so how come Ignite isn't a virtual office?
We actually ourselves are. In fact, when I say virtual office, the reality is that you need to have some core people in one particular location. But I'll give you an example. We have part of our development team is in India, as predictably. I mean, we have a bunch of founders who are Indian, including myself. Our QA is in India. Our call center is outside US. We have a team of developers in Poland. I have 2 developers working in Idaho and Dallas. And there's one guy here who hardly comes to the office because he lives 100 miles from here. So, if you really look at it, it's become a virtual office to a large extent.
That makes sense. One final point I wanted to make. I saw a stat from analysts from IDC today that said combined cloud-based services are projected to grow globally from $14 billion in 2009 to $33 billion in 2013. So I know you eat a lot of humble pie, Vineet, but what part of this do you wish to own?
Wow, that would be a great question. But, again, to answer it in a different way, that number sounds huge, and it's very key to say what exactly do they mean by cloud-based services.
True.
We are further segmenting it using data from firms focusing on the SMB market, like the AMIs of the world, and saying that if I look at the file server market for companies which are 1 to 99 employees in North America, how big is that pie? That's approximately $7.9 billion. Now, even if we were to get a teeny percentage of that, we would have built a very successful and very big company. So I would basically ratchet down this number to almost a quarter of it as the potential target market, and then a teeny slice of it, even 1 to 2%, makes us a pretty substantial play.
Definitely. Wow. Well, any other thoughts we haven't covered here? I mean, where is Ignite going? What are the plans for the next quarter?
The big focus is, and that's why I was referring to the comment made by, I think, James Staton, that we truly are placing a bet that the hybrid is the way to go. I know somebody had just mentioned that bandwidth is going to improve and people could live truly off the cloud. I do believe in that vision, but we still have long ways to go. We heard this thing 3 years back, a virtual office. The reality is there's no such thing as a virtual office or a paperless Office even today. The hybrid is going to be the way to grow a cloud-based solution. So essentially, if you really look at it, it's kind of your 1 foot on the ground, or I like to say your head in the cloud and your feet on the ground approach is what's going to work for quite some time. I see that to be the next 2 years before I could comfortably say, hey, we could live off the cloud and it'll sustain everything.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, Vineet. Everyone, Vineet Jain.
Thank you so much.
With Ignite. Yeah. And we'll make sure that we plug, the Twitter accounts and things at the end of the show. But for right now, the weather in LA has been a bit stormy this week.
Has it been a bit stormy? And I wonder why that would be.
I don't know.
Could it be?
I hear something.
Are we hearing something approaching? Yes.
I do.
It is Storm on Demand. Everyone get out your storm mugs. Oh, you don't have a storm mug, Max?
Max doesn't have a storm mug. Haha, you're not in the storm club.
Storm on Demand. Storm on Demand is an infrastructure as a service cloud computing platform that is powerful enough to replace dedicated servers and Max, because he has no Stormcom. A proprietary cloud platform that was designed by Liquid Web, one of the largest web hosting providers with over 12 years of experience, which is more than Max. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I think it is.
It's not.
Is it? No? You started when you were 10?
16.
Okay. It's easier to use and less expensive than Amazon EC2. Some features included server setup in minutes, easy scaling, backup and restoration capabilities, pay-as-you-go utility-style billing, so the power in your house. Options include cPanel, Fantastico, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, and much, much more. Storm On Demand is at stormondemand.com. Thank you, Storm On Demand. And we don't have little guys.
I still want to see the hat with the horns.
We're going to get there.
The helmet.
We're going to up the production value of the Storm On Demand. I'm not going to ever sing that one, though. That's reserved for Verticore.
I won't sing.
Yes.
No more singing. Anyway. Well, we have an app of the week.
We do.
We have Paran Dergar on the phone with Expenser at XPENSER.
Yeah, we rock and roll. Yeah, we debuted this last week. So it's no, sorry.
We have a new lead-in. That's great, and we've got like the strumming.
So, yeah.
I think Mark was doing that.
Yeah.
No, not me.
You sure?
No, that was actually good. So yes.
Well, anyway, we have Expenser at Expenser XPENSER on Twitter, and tax day is upon us in 48 hours. Ow! That's all I have to say is ow.
I'm done. I'm not.
So to me, like this is the perfect time of year when people feel that ultimate coulda, shoulda, woulda of expense tracking. And so when I first came across Expenser, and I actually have met Paran before, I said, wow, to take my phone and be able to just, send in an expense on the go makes so much more sense to me. And so that's really what we're going to talk about here. We're going to go through the application. Really, Expenser started as a personal tool to track expenses because, well, Paran hated them. Isn't that right, Paran?
So it's literally a pain.
Absolutely. So the backstory is, I live in San Diego, and my office officially was in Los Angeles, and I spent a lot of time in the Bay Area. So I had lots of expense reports, and I tell you, I just despised these things. Hated doing them. I'd do them, once every 6 months, and my wife would get very upset with me because, we were owed quite a bit of money. So really, Expenser grew out of a desire to make this easier for myself. And literally, it was initially just the ability to email an expense to Expenser and say, look, for example, taxi $18, airport to office, and then be done with it. And that was really the whole genesis of it. And, for a little while my PDA broke, I added SMS, and people would see me sending these SMS messages and emails, and
then it caught on, right?
And one thing led to another.
That's the funny part to me is people saw how easy it was, and they just started catching on, saying, can I use it too?
And now you are a cloud.
Where if you have expenses, people will just take to it because you know exactly how painful it is.
Yeah. So now do you think of yourself as a cloud application, or is this something someone else told you that you were? I'm just curious.
Well, we've been called software as a service or whatever you want to call it. I guess I'm less concerned with labels, if you will.
Okay, fair enough.
I call it a practical application.
Absolutely.
God, we can always use another one of those.
So really quick, though, I wanted to go over Paran's background a little bit. So before you founded Expenser, you spent 4 years at Yahoo. You were one of the core architects of the Panama Project, managing the platform groups. So for people who don't know about the Panama Project, you want to talk about that for just a second?
Sure, Panama was a big project. So Mark mentioned earlier this the GoTo.com and this idea of advertising that you see, for example, in Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft now. So this Panama project was essentially to rebuild really the vast majority of systems that powered that advertising system. It grew out of the LA group and then expanded up north and involved very many people. Very, very large project for Yahoo. So I had a lot of fun actually trying to shepherd this thing and help make it a reality. And so it took a couple of years, involved a couple of hundred people, and was a very, very large, very fun project. A lot of work, but excellent learning experience.
Nice. And then you also co-founded and were the chief architect of Blue Titan Software. So that was a venture-backed web services infrastructure company that was sold to SOA Software. Is that right, Prand?
That's correct.
Nice. So you've actually had an
So to give you a little bit of background on Blue Titan, this was fairly early on in terms of this idea of supporting APIs and providing security, governance, monitoring, directory services, etc. for them. So Blue Titan provided all of that infrastructure, and we had essentially our software would let our clients make their APIs more available, easier to find, etc.
Well, why don't we jump into the demo? Mark, do you have it up on screen?
It's up on the screen, so you can go to my screen.
Yeah, let's cut to Mark's screen, and we'll go through a nice demo here. Can everybody see that?
Fantastic. Okay, so Expenser, the idea is to make it as easy as possible. Really, our goal, as I mentioned earlier at a conference I was at, was that I want you to leave your trips with no receipts in your wallet and no expense report to do.
Oh, I agree with you.
Absolutely.
With just nothing else left to do. And the way you do that is you grab yourself an account. You can see it's very easy to sign up. We just need your email address. Or you can sign up using your Google account. So I'm just going to log in using my Google account. As Amanda mentioned earlier, the idea is just to submit your expense immediately while you still know what it's about, using any device, anything that's available to you.
Well, what are the
So, for
different
example,
ways then?
The moment that you step out of the taxi, you can call and say, taxi, $18, airport to hotel.
Wait.
Let
me stop you there.
You can, for example, take a picture of the receipt for lunch and then send an email that says, lunch, $45 with Amanda. Email it. We'll grab both the receipt and the expense and classify it, and you're done. You can send an SMS message, for example, mileage, 54 miles, client X visit, and again, we capture it. You can also track time, so you can, for example, say time start and time stop.
So did you actually say? I got to stop you because I thought you said something amazing. That I could actually call in and speak my expense, and you'll capture that with my voice.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's
I don't let you down. I told you they were really
That's
great.
really cool.
To analyze our user base. For example, we have a lot of real estate agents, insurance agents, those kinds of folks that love Expenser because they have a lot of mileage, and all they do is, as they drive place to place, they just call and say their expense. And again, it's done, and now they, we mentioned Amanda taxes earlier. This year I handed my accountant sort of just a report of everything categorized, and he was just kind of staring at me like, what happened to you? Compared to last year, this is quite a contrast. So that's the nice thing. Very easy to capture, and then print a nice report, and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
That's really impressive.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to show you a little bit of this, and I don't know how much of it you guys can actually see on the screen, but I'm going to show you just instant messaging. So again, you can use voice, email, SMS, IM, Twitter, really at this point pretty much anything. There's a Firefox hotkey, etc. I'm going to show you Expenser IM just because it's immediate and you can see it. So for example, I might say lunch, $45 with Mark, right? And actually, I don't know if you can see that, but I've unfortunately misspelled lunch.
Yep.
Right? It's LNCH instead of lunch. And you might do this, you can imagine, if you're sending an SMS message. But that's okay. When I actually submit this, if I go over to Expenser and I load my app here, let me increase the font size.
Yeah, that probably help a little bit.
Yeah, that helps.
We actually realized that LNCH is a misspelling of lunch, and we know that lunch your company categorizes as meals. So what we did was we analyzed a little over 1 million expense submissions from users to really figure out what is it that people give us. We found very early on that people don't care what we tell them in terms of how they should submit things to us. They'll just send us whatever they feel like. So we kind of changed our whole approach and really applied some AI to figure out what is it that people do and what is it that they mean. So it's that simple. Or you can do things like, going back to my IM, I'll do time starts, say design review, right? This essentially starts a timer. Say I bill hourly. This starts a timer, and I can define, let me show you that. If I go to Expenser and I go to my keywords page, I can define my time tracking parameters. So here, for example, I say that I'm going to charge $175 an hour at time increments of 6 minutes. Let's make this, for example, 15, and always round up, right? So this essentially defines what my parameters are. And now if I go back to my IM and say time stop, this stops the timer. And within Expenser, I can see that my time is recorded. There it is. So based on my rules, it's 15 minutes at $175 an hour, and I'm all done. Other nice things you can do, for example, here I have an invoice. This is just my email account. I have an invoice from my hosting provider that actually includes a PDF of my receipt. All I can do, it's very easy for me just to forward to Expenser. So I'll forward it to r@expenser.com for receipt, and then I'll say, for example, hosting, say, $35 for March. And
it just slurps in the PDF and reads it and puts it in.
You got it exactly. So in fact, let me show you that. So if I go over here,
Everyone's in
insane.
disbelief in the
Best
studio right
application
now.
Ever.
well, if you guys have expenses, you'll know. I mean, this is the nice thing. We get so many emails from people that are just absolutely sort of love this whole thing because it is generally very painful. And in this case,
Created out of a hatred for expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done with that.
So this is the print version. If I hit print, for example, I can get this nice report that not only has all my expenses, but you'll see a receipt column, and that cross-references to all my receipts. So here's, for example, a receipt for a Usenet subscription. Here's a lunch receipt that I took a picture of with my phone. Here's a PDF. In fact, I think this is the one I had probably sent earlier of the that was attached to the email and so forth. Everything gathered up nicely and ready to print and submit.
We have a question here from the chat room from JProz, JPROZ, that says, does this tie into back-end systems that are already in place?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we support export to a number of formats. For example, FreshBooks, which is a popular online invoicing application, we can export to, as well as Outright, which is an online accounting application. And there's other formats like QIF or QuickBooks and Quicken and so forth. We do integrate with back-end systems so if you look at our product offerings, there's essentially Expenser that you can sign up for right now available on the web, and that provides all the features we're looking at. There's Expenser for Business, which is something that we've launched to a limited number of users right now, and that lets you define your org chart and do submissions and approvals. So, for example, you can submit your expense report to your manager, and she can approve all of it or some of it, set up comments, etc. And then we have Expenser Corporate Edition, which is for our larger clients. And in those cases, we do actually integrate with the back-end systems. And actually, that's a good opportunity to talk about our APIs. We launched a little while ago what we call Expenser Platform, which is a very comprehensive set of APIs, which allows you to essentially tie into anything. And that's what's being used by third parties to build an iPhone application called Fresh Expense that provides an interface for Expenser. There's an Android application as well you can look up called Expenser. Okay. Those same APIs are what we use to tie into the back-end system. So that's a long way of answering that absolutely. We do tie into the back-end for our corporate customers.
Great. And how much does this cost? Because I think people would pay a lot of money to have something like this.
So right now everything is free. So Expenser is free right now, and you can sign up and get the full functionality. Once we roll out premium accounts, which will be quite soon,
okay.
It'll be $9 a month for each account. And then the business accounts start at $35 a month for 5 users, and then you can pay per user after that.
Okay. $35 for business.
Then for our corporate accounts, obviously, we try to figure out how much money the client has and extract all of it out of them. So that's my appreciated.
I also like to personally thank you for using a vowel in your name, so it's not Expenser, like, you know, all the other startups.
That was the first thing Mark asked when I said, "Oh, I think we should have Expenser on the show," and he said, "Is it an ER on the end or just an R?"
Because if there was no E in there, this wouldn't have happened. He's telling you right now.
Well,
Any other questions?
We actually have Expenser.com properly spelled as well. That'll go to the same website.
Oh.
But we want it to be a little more Googleable, if you will.
Yep.
But if you go to Expenser.com correctly spelled, you'll end up at the same place.
Very nice.
All right.
All right. Any other
So
questions?
just to show you a couple of more things,
Sure.
you can actually arrange your expenses into folders, if you will, or what we call expense reports.
Oh, yeah.
And you can assign keywords. For example, I have a report here called car, which is where I where I record my car expenses. Let's take a look at that. So there's my oil change that I did actually quite a while back. I gotta get another oil change here. But anyway, you can assign keywords to these. So for example, if you were to say oil change $25 car, it'll go into this folder as opposed to another. And you can use this to keep track of your various clients, etc.
I have another quick question.
This is where you can actually register all your various devices. So your email address as your Twitter address, SMS, everything.
You
here.
can tweet
You
expenses.
can put up your account settings. So, for example, one of the things that's surprisingly popular is you can get an RSS feed of all your expenses.
Huh.
So if you turn that on, you can get an RSS feed and pull it into your reader or whatever you want.
And then say, oh my God, I'm spending way too much money.
It's like an expense Rosetta Stone. I love this.
So you can set your time zone, your currency, etc. And then keywords is where a lot of the actions happen. So, for example, you can set up a budget or a starting balance using a plus sign in front of your account of your expense. You can file to report, which is what we looked at earlier. Track your mileage and define your mileage rate. Time tracking we also looked at. And then currency conversion. So, for example, if you're traveling abroad, you can say lunch 45 euros with Jack, and it's recorded and done.
Yeah, it'll immediately, switch it over for you. We have another quick question from the chat room, again from Jay Praz, that says, are pictures of receipts legally acceptable for audit purposes, so for SOX compliance, financial reporting, that sort of thing?
That's an excellent question. Actually, so according to IRS rules, electronic copies of receipts are acceptable.
They
so
are.
From an IRS perspective, you're good to go. You can actually keep electronic copies. You don't need to keep the paper copies.
It's really important because I have so many paper files still back home that probably should just toss if I've got the pictures of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Anything else from the room here? Max, any questions for him? You seem to like the product.
It's amazing. I hate doing expenses, and this is going to make my life so much
So
easier.
this is actually a very basic question, though. Do you think that being able to do or to take care of the expense in the moment will help you actually do it and not procrastinate?
Yes,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's
Well, and actually, that's an important point, Amanda, because
Right.
it's not just a matter of looking at your credit card statement or what have you and trying to figure it out, because you still got to remember who you had lunch or dinner with 3 weeks ago, right?
Exactly.
And the only time you know that is when you actually incur the expense, immediately record it, be done, forget about it.
Right.
We call it fire and forget expense tracking.
Fire and forget.
That's
I
fantastic.
love that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if people want to try it out, where do they go?
Go to expenser.com, sign up for an account. It's about the easiest thing you can do, and it's all free right now.
All free. Come on, it's free, everybody. Just try it out.
Free is a good
Spencer.com.
price.
Well, I believe that about wraps up, the app of the week. Thank you again, Parand, for joining us. And I think I just heard a clap of thunder. I mean, is it raining in LA again?
Why, you might have.
I'm so sick
Perhaps
of the
the
rain.
Valkyries are about to invade once again? Storm on demand. Storm on demand. Get your storm flagons. They're not cups.
I'll
they're
share.
Flagons.
Oh, thank you.
Max
right.
can hold my
Get
mug.
your storm flagons out. Storm on demand.
But you'd better not drink my coffee.
An infrastructure as a service cloud computing platform that is powerful enough to replace dedicated servers. A proprietary cloud platform designed by Liquid Web, one of the largest web hosting providers. Actually, I'm going to actually put them up this time. I keep forgetting to do this. So there they are. They're up there.
All right, let's cut to Storm.
Yes. Designed by Liquid Web with over 12 years of experience. It's easier to use and less expensive than Amazon EC2. Features include server setup in minutes, easy scaling, backup and restoration capabilities, and pay-as-you-go utility-style billing. Options include cPanel, Fantastico, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, your own private Macs. No, that doesn't come with it. and much more.
We don't
It'd be
share
good
Macs.
if it did, but it doesn't. But nonetheless, it's still pretty awesome. Storm on Demand can be found at stormondemand.com. Thank you.
How does pay-as-you-go work?
Well,
Utility
you
style.
pay as you go.
Pay as you
I mean, because you don't have to
Utility style.
requisition. You don't have to like.
well, yeah,
buy
but I
the
mean, does
services
it
in
charge
advance.
based
monthly.
on
Like a
CPU
monthly
hours,
bill?
or?
I actually don't know the answer to
Yeah.
that. But nonetheless, Storm on Demand, I'm sure will answer all your
I'm
questions.
interested.
But we'll find that out for next show. How's that? So I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer that question.
Well, I think we have about wrapped things up here at
we
This
have.
Week in Cloud Computing. We have had Vineet Jain. We can't cut to Vineet. I think we've already lost
I think we
Vineet
left.
with Ignite.
Busy man.
But thank you to Vineet Jain with Ignite, and make sure you check them out. And then also, of course, Parand Daragar, thank you for taking the pain out of expense tracking. You know, that's definitely, you know, something I think that many people on our show will be paying attention to. So, also, our sponsors, Storm On Demand.
And Vertacor.
Which
got their,
and
actually,
NetDNA.
And NetDNA. Actually, if we can cut to my screen again, I got Vertacor's website up so you can actually see that site now.
So you can
too.
see Vertacor as well.
Yeah, I forgot to put them up because I was all moving my guitar around and stuff. But nonetheless.
Because you're trying to make me sing.
Vertacor, oh, Vertacor.
I'm not
Come
singing.
on. No? Why not?
Vertacor, oh, Vertacor. There, okay.
That's good. That's good. We'll have
So
to work
anyway,
on it.
Vertacor as well. Make sure, you know, that you're tweeting out thank you to our sponsors because you can get the iPad.
Right.
Oh yeah.
The iPad?
We have the iPad
This
giveaway.
is mine. You can't have this one, but one
So,
very much like it.
Our sponsors, you know, they're the reason why we're here, support new media. So if you tweet out thank you to all of our sponsors and make sure you use the pound this TWICC
so
we
I can
can
find it.
you, we will be giving this away on the next show.
And 5 runner-up
And
prizes.
5 runner-up prizes of Tony Hsieh's book,
Delivering Happiness.
Delivering Happiness. So, and of course, if you need cloud services, check out our sponsors. Just check them out.
Yep.
And ideas for the show, if you have any, which you should because great show, come on. It's pitch@thisweekend.com, and that will go to Mark as well as myself and the team. So if you have a company that would like to be on the show, if you have an event that is coming up and you would like us to mention it, like we do at the beginning, if you have general comments for us, please.
Or news or tips or anything like that. Yeah.
So pitch@thisweekend.com. And of course, if you would like to blog about us, that's always great. If you would like to send a tweet out saying, wow, this week in cloud computing, check it out. You know, that would definitely help too. So I think that's enough, you know, for plugging this week in cloud computing.
so.
But next week, same time, same place, same cloud time, same
Same cloud
cloud
channel.
channel. And I'm your host, Amanda Coulong, This Week in Cloud Computing.